Well, hey, boys and girls, it's that time. It's Sunday evening. It's Live at 5, and this is Tommy Ellison, and you are with me on Senior Moments, Evidence of a Misspent Youth. And this is episode number 45, if you can believe that. And the title of this episode is The Summer of 66. Sounds like a movie title, doesn't it? Summer of 42, I think, was the name of that movie. But anyway, this is an interesting title because of some things that went on this past week. And the thing, well, as you know, most of the time when I do these things, you know, I'm trying to, I guess, bring back an old memory that pops in my head, and that's why I call this Senior Moments, because I have these from time to time, and I jot them down sometimes. I don't have I'm having problems with short-term memory, and I'm sure those of you who are my age or somewhere in the vicinity probably are beginning to recognize that as well. In fact, my wife bought me a senior GPS for Christmas this past year. She said it's for people, you know, it tells you how to get to where you're going, but it also reminds you of why you were going to begin with. So anyway, well, with that said, I thought what I would do is kind of backtrack on a Facebook post that I saw this past week from my old buddy Michael Chambers. Went to Fairfield with Michael. He was a little older than me. And then as I was preparing this broadcast tonight, I actually looked up and realized that in this thing, Mike actually posted this on February 25th of 2015. And I don't know if this post is that old or if the clock on his computer is set wrong. I don't know. But it kind of surprised me. But let me read this to you, because if you're not on the Fairfield Alumni, Friends of Fairfield, whatever they call that Facebook page that our good friends from Fairfield monitor and administer, you may not have seen this, but it says this. It says, a good Doug Calhoun story and yours truly story. We were at football camp at Camp Highland, which was the Fairfield Baptist Church camp. We were ending drills when apparently I got the wrong play, and Doug and I ran full speed into each other. They were both in the backfield, and I guess they, instead of running one direction or the other, they ran opposite into one another. And he said I apparently was the only one that got hurt, because they took me to the local hospital, and guess what? Brain concussion. So the rest of the night, Coach Lutz and Coach Cyphers would come into the room and make sure that I was awake, because back then, if you had a concussion, you could not sleep for 24 hours or something like that. What would happen if you did sleep? Well, I'm not really sure, Michael, but, you know, be like my good buddy Skip Parvin, preacher, one day was doing the invitation, and he said, you need to come and meet Jesus. Come down to the front, because you don't want to wake up dead tomorrow and find out it was too late. So I guess if you had a concussion and you went to sleep, there's a possibility you could wake up dead. But anyway, the next day, the sentence breaks up a little bit. He said the next day you would see Steve Horn stomp a 7-foot snake to death while running up that hill. And the hill that they're talking about was what was called the Nature Trail. The Nature Trail was there. This football camp that we're talking about was actually held in the camp that First Baptist in Fairfield owned, and it was up in Oneonta, as he said in the post. But in my mind, I think it was called Skyview. Camp Skyview was the actual name of that. And so there was a lot of nature things going on there, but that was where it went. And we all got on a bus and rode up there to town of Oneonta, just south of Oneonta, up on the mountain there, and participated in apparently what was the first and only football camp that Fairfield High ever had. So we're at this camp. We ride the bus up there. I remember we boarded right in front of the First Baptist Church there, an old kind of a rundown bus. I'm not sure. I guess the church owned it, I guess. And then the coaches went up, and their little Coach Lutz and Coach Cannon had twin, well, they weren't twins, but they were identical VW microbuses. And that was what they were using on a daily basis back then. I don't know who influenced who, or if they went and bought them together, like picking out plates. But nevertheless, that was the significance of that bus. And so we would be practicing and playing, or not playing, but practicing and getting in shape while we were up there at that camp. And I have some memories of that. And Michael, if you're watching this live or on the rerun, you may remember this. Anybody that was there that year, this was actually the season of '66, but it was the class of '67 who were the seniors, and I think Michael was a senior that year. But so the sophomores, those of us were the youngest guys there, was taking a lot of grief because it was like, it's not like getting hazed in the military, but it's pretty close. And there was these big giant bunk beds in one end of the hall, that we slept in during the week. And I can remember one of the memories that I had about it was that Coach Cannon had a bunk bed. It wasn't a bunk bed. It was just a single bed, but it was kind of designed like a bunk bed, metal frame, rough springs, little thin mattress. But his bunk bed, or his bed rather, was out in the mess hall, just at the doorway going into the bunk bed area. And I guess, in a way, I guess he was chaperoning us. One, making sure we went to bed early, and lights out, and not messing around in the bunk bed area, or slipping out and maybe going downtown. And I'm not sure what we would have found, because I think Blunt's a dry county and still is. But nevertheless, that was where his bed was. And I can remember some of the seniors got together and took a folding chair, metal chair, and put it underneath his mattress one day during the week. And so when he went to bed that night, he was sleeping on a thin mattress on top of a metal folding chair. And the next morning at breakfast, he was complaining about his back hurting. And of course, everybody's kind of giggling, and some of us sophomores had no idea why they were laughing. We weren't in on it. But I'm not really sure how many nights he slept on that folding chair before he actually got tipped off, or maybe decided to look under the mattress. But one of the other things that I remember about that camp was every morning at about 6 o'clock, we had to get up, get out of the bed, and meet Coach Lutz out on the little dirt road in front of the lodge there and run. And we would take off running, and I guess whoever was in the front knew the way to go and the way to get back. I never had the luxury of being in the front of the pack. It seems like I was always in the back of the pack. In fact, one of the memories that I have of that was Coach Lutz driving along behind us, and I'm like the last guy. Maybe there was one other guy with me. Could have been Danny Evans. I don't know. But anyway, we were kind of bringing up the rear at a slower pace than everybody else. And Coach Lutz was sitting there right on our tail, blowing his horn, telling us to run faster. And we're sitting there dying because we're both out of shape. And so, that VW microbus, when I see those tan microbuses today, the old ones, of course, that's the first thing I think of, were those 6 o'clock runs and me always being at the back of the pack. And then we would eat breakfast, and then we would go down the nature trail, which I think I showed a picture of it. The nature trail was an uphill trail coming from the lake. And of course, from the camp, you actually ran downhill. Downhill was a piece of cake. Uphill was another story, because not only was it uphill, you were literally one slap out for practicing, and we were doing 2-a-day practices in shirts and shorts and cleats. And so we weren't in pads, but we were basically in a week-long conditioning drill. And after every practice, both morning and afternoon, and it was hot, it was humid on that lake. I know the humidity must have been 75, 80, 90%. We were all like, experiencing rain in our gym shorts. Trying to run up and down that trail was a big deal, though. Down, like I say, was easy. Running up, another story. And of course, you couldn't stop to rest, because there was always a senior or a junior pushing you, or a coach trying to get you to run up that nature trail. And like I said, we had 2 practices, for that solid week in shirts and shorts. And that's, Coach Lutz is chasing after us with the microbus. And I can remember, again, it's funny what comes back to you sometimes, but I can remember in the afternoon after practice, everybody would take a shower, get ready for supper, and somebody always had a transistor radio that they had brought with us. And I don't guess it was illegal, as long as we didn't play it too loud. But, they say that that music is the soundtrack of your life. Have you ever heard that? I know I've used that expression a lot because I love music, and kind of got musical Tourette's in a lot of ways, because I like to just break out in spontaneous song to, anyway, that's another story. But anyway, the song that was playing on the radio, and I'm assuming it was a local station, or it might have been the old mighty 690 WVOK that was, making its way all the way up to Oneonta, Alabama. But the song that they were playing was the one that the animals had recently recorded. And it was called "We Gotta Get Out of This Place." Just a little bit of minutia there. On the B-side was "I Can't Believe It" on the 45, those of you who remember 45s. But that song was released in July of 1965, so it was almost a year old when we were listening to it there at Camp Skyview. And it was a kind of a bluesy rock song. I don't know if y'all remember this, but the theme of the song was really and truly becoming the theme of where we were that week and how we felt, because we were singing along with it. We gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you. That was the song, and that was our sentiment, because the sooner we got out of Camp Skyview, the better off we were going to be. Now, that was the 66 team that you see there. And as I was looking over this photograph earlier today, this is my sophomore year. This would have been the class of 68. And I was looking at the coaches' pictures. You've got in the upper left-hand corner there, Coach Lutz standing on his knees. Right in front of Coach Lutz was Coach Frank Garzrick. And then on the opposite side, standing, you had Coach Ronnie Cyphers, who left after this year and went to Inslee to coach. And then kneeling in front of Coach Cyphers is Coach Bob Cannon. And as I was looking at this picture, I guess came to mind the fact that all four of those coaches have passed away, and I hope they rest in peace. They didn't they didn't let us rest in peace, but nevertheless, that was their job. So we are going into the season highly touted. Everybody, you know, the newspapers were putting out what Coach Saban called the rat poison about how good Fairfield was going to be, because the previous year, I think they had won the dental clinic game, and so there was a lot of seniors, a lot of experience coming back, a lot of big guys, a lot of fast backs, and Neil Letcher on the front row, number 5, was a QB1, the quarterback, and Doug Calhoun was a standout running back coming back to the team, had a great line blocking. But we had issues. We had problems. And, you know, by the time the season was over, and thanks to Alabama High School Athletic Association, I can give you these stats on that 66 season, but we opened with John Carroll. And John Carroll was quarterback. QB1 for Carroll was a gentleman by the name of Pat Sullivan. It was actually his junior year at Carroll. And Pat, even then as a junior, was destined for greatness because he ran up and down the field. I can remember standing on the sideline. I didn't play much that year, watching him run sprint out right and sprint out left, and he would get loose, and just watching him go by the team bench on his way to the end zone. And as you can see, they beat us like a drum, 40-19. That was our opening game. It was at John Carroll, and it was the Big L for us on September the 9th. Shades Valley had a great team that year, beat us 31-2. How we got a safety on them, I'll never know. I don't remember. A lot of this I've blocked out completely. I have no memories of these games. But we got 2 points apparently, and they got 31. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the year that Shades Valley went on to be in the first high school playoff in Alabama that was done for the 4A schools only. There were no 3A, 2A, 1A playoffs that year, and Shades Valley went to the playoffs. I remember listening to it on the radio in my house, and they got beat, and it was by one of the Montgomery teams. I don't remember if it was Sidney Lanier or Robert E. Lee, but it was one of those teams. I don't remember which one wound up being state champion. And then you had Bessemer, another big loss, 20-6. Shut out by Jones Valley, 28-0. Lost to Minor, 33-19. Lost to Hueytown, 28-6. Lost to Sylacauga, 39-20. And there we are, 2/3 of the way through our season, and we are 0-7. It was Coach Lutz's worst record ever for his coaching career, and we were the guys that were experiencing those losses. It was not a great time, because you know when you lose, you run a lot, and we did run a lot. I always thought we were in pretty good shape condition-wise as a team, but I think we had some internal problems. And what happened, I guess, I talked about this on an earlier podcast, but we were playing Sylacauga, and we were wearing those darn purple jerseys. You know, we wore those 2 years that I was there and never won a game that I recall wearing those purple jerseys. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. But we came into halftime, and whoever at Sylacauga had really done us, a kindness. They had these Coca-Colas on a table in the locker room, in the visitors' locker room, which was nothing to write home about. And Coach Lutz was so mad because we were losing, and we were losing for stupid reasons. And he came in and literally raked all those Cokes off of the table. Glass went everywhere. Those old-fashioned Coke bottles, those are kind of new in this artificially created image here, but he raked them off the table, and he turned around, and the only profane word that I ever heard Coach Lutz say was in that locker room. He said, you know, Fairfield, and at the top of his lungs, Fairfield is going to the dogs, and you don't give a damn. And that was it. And then he turned around and looked at one of our seniors, and he said, I'm not going to call the name, but he said, son, did I hear you as we walked out to start this game, you told somebody sitting in the stands that we may not be good, but we sure do look good. Did you really say that? Did I hear that right? And the boy dropped his head sheepishly and admitted that he had. And as I say, we went on, we lost the game, and you know, it was not a good night for us, not a good night. And up to that point, not a good season at all. Well, if you look, right after that Sylacauga game, we had 3 wins. And I can remember sitting in the gym on that pregame time frame of the McAdory game, and the coaches called all the team to the meeting room there in the gym and told us that he had suspended 3 players. And he didn't give us the reason. I don't remember him giving us the reason, but I know it had something to do with discipline and attitude. And again, I'm not going to call the names because I don't want to embarrass them, nor do I want to call the wrong name. But there were 2 seniors and 1 sophomore that were kicked off the team. And I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, between the time we were in that meeting and the time we took the field to play McAdory, there was an attitude shift in that team. And as you can see, we wound up beating McAdory, barely, 14-13. But, you know, you would have thought we won the Super Bowl after having an 0-7 start. And then we went to Tarrant, and we beat them 25-14. And then we went to Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook was a brand new high school. I think this was the first season for Mountain Brook High School. And I don't know if they were been considered good or not, but we whipped them that night 28-6. And if you look at the season totals, you can see, you know, the trends that were there. We scored 139 points that season, you know, averaging 13.9 a game, but we allowed 252 points, almost double. So you can see why we had a 3-7 record with that type of offensive and defensive production. And the one bright moment, I guess, out of that was Doug Calhoun, who was a great running back and had all manner of potential, was named honorable mention by the Birmingham News in their all-state category. Now, like I said, there was an attitude change, and that attitude change carried forward to the next year, because the next year, this was the 67 season. Did I got that right? Class of 68, football season of 67. Yeah. And as you can see, there was a little bit of change in that coaching staff. I mentioned Coach Cyphers had left to go to Inslee, but you still had Coach Lutz there as head coach. You had Coach Cannon there coming back. You had Frank Garsrick sitting there in front of Coach Fuller. And the 2 new coaches that year was Coach Jimmy Fuller, an alumni of Fairfield, and a guy that knew how to win because he came straight off of an Alabama team that had won 2 national championships and should have won the 3rd one had they not given it to the tie between Michigan State and Notre Dame that year. But nevertheless, the other coach that was new that year was Coach Rudy McGehee from Mississippi. And coaches, they had a new attitude, and I believe the team had a new attitude as well. And I'll show you what the results of that was. The 67 season, John Carroll, big win, 13-10. They were coming to Fairfield to play that year. That was our opening game. It was their opening game on September the 8th. And everybody and their brother knew that Pat Sullivan was going to be the man that year. And believe it or not, we were expecting him. We knew what he was all about. And our defensive coaches ran a marvelous strategy. We blitzed that quarterback every play of the game, with the exception of punts and, of course, kickoffs. So every time they lined up to run or throw the ball, we had somebody in our backfield or a quarterback blitzing that quarterback. And we, by and large, shut them down and won that game. We went back to Bessemer, beat them 19-0. Then it got troublesome. We brought Jones Valley. I'm not sure that Jones Valley is right, because we were at home when we played Jones Valley. That stat is not correct in the High School Athletic Association. And we lost 7-6. And the reason we lost, okay, I'm a little bit prejudiced here. I'm a little, my butt's still a little sore over this one. We were ahead 6-0. We had scored, we missed the extra point, we were ahead 6-0, and in the final moments of that game, referee threw a flag on James Owen, our stellar cornerback and running back, because everybody played both ways that year, and called him for pass interference. It wasn't, but, you'll never prove it otherwise. Gave him a first down on about the 5 or 6 yard line, if I recall. And their QB1 was a gentleman by the name of Ralph Brock, who eventually changed his first name to Dieter, and he went on to play at Jacksonville State. He also played in the Canadian League and was a great quarterback. And he took it to us that night, beating us 1 point, 7-6. And then there was the infamous Minor game. And Minor was at home. It was homecoming. And you know what? We put back on those stupid purple jerseys. Well, you know what happens. When you wear the purple jersey, you lose. Sports has a lot of superstitions. You know that. I know that. But nevertheless, that was the deal. And we were actually tied 20-20. I don't remember the exact score, but Minor scored on a long touchdown pass because our dear departed brother, Danny Bianchi, who was playing cornerback, slipped and fell and left the guy wide open. He caught the pass, took it for the TD, and it was the winning margin by which they beat us. But for the remainder of that season, we beat Hueytown 20-7. That was when Steve Higginbotham was quarterback there. We played Sylacauga again at our place, 20-7 win. We went to 27-7 win. We went to McAdory, a school that we had not lost to in something like 20 years, and beat them 21-0. We went to Tarrant, scored big, 23-0, and then went to Mountain Brook and beat them 13-7. And as you can see, look at the 67 season totals. Our record was 7-2, certainly an improvement over the 3-7 the year before. We had scored 162 points that year, and we only allowed 66 points. So we were almost 3 times the points offensively scored as opposed to the defense and the magnificent job they did. You know, that team has some great players. You had Don Fleury on that team. You had Jimmy Berriman on that team. You had Bobby Merrill on that team. And if you look at the honors that were passed out following that season, Don Fleury was in the All-Star game playing tackle. He was 6'3", 210. And if you track it on down into the All-State category for 67, Don Fleury made All-State in different positions as listed by the newspapers. The AP had him as an All-State at guard. He played guard at, I think, most of the year. Birmingham News, in that second line, named him All-State. And the Birmingham Post-Herald, you remember that one? That was the morning paper, named him on the All-State team, also in the tackle position. And Jimmy Berriman, great guy, went on to play at Livingston University, coached for many years by AP and by the Birmingham News, was named to that All-State team. So again, a big difference, not only in the record, but also in the attitude, because, you know, that loss to Jones Valley kind of let us know that we weren't 10 foot tall and bulletproof, but we knew we were better than the year before, and it was our goal to prove it. And that was when, as I say, our senior year, my senior year, we were an undefeated team in the football season of 68. That was a magnificent year for Fairfield, and it was actually a record 9-0 that stood for many, many years before it was ever tied, and I'm sure it's probably been beaten now, although the school itself is completely gone, and the new Fairfield Preparatory School seems to be having their own sets of records. But that 68 season saw Red Lutz in his 12th season as head coach at Fairfield, and we also were the first team to be in a playoff appearance, and that was in the second playoff series for 3A schools in addition to the other divisions. But look at this record. Pell City, at home. I think I was captain that year with Steve Stewart. Steve was about 4'8", and I was about 6'9", and we walked out for the coin toss. And you could have, I remember looking at those guys looking at us going, you know, what's the deal here? But anyway, 47-14 was the big win. We went to John Carroll. Sullivan was gone. Thank you. 32-6 win. 39 win over McAdory. 19-14 win over Jones Valley. 26-0 over Hueytown. Jeff Davis in Crampton Bowl. And I did a podcast about that game early. You need to look that up. You'll appreciate it. But Jeff Davis took it on the chin, 42-12 there at Crampton Bowl. Bessemer, 20-13. Tarrant, 27-7. And Tuscaloosa, 27-20. That game was actually the last game played on real grass at Bryant-Denny, and it was right after that where they put the old version of AstroTurf in, and of course later they took it all out and went back to natural grass again. But the sad part of that season was the playoff game on November 22nd. We played at Sachs High School up in just above Anniston, Alabama, and lost 31-0 in the first rounds. And you look at those season totals. There we were. We had scored 279 points. We had held defense to 11.7 yards per game our that was a per game average, but the points allowed for the season was 117. So again, almost triple the amount of offense versus defense. And if you go back and look at the first set of numbers, you had 2 shutouts that year. What in the world happened that would cause us to lose 31-0 to this North Alabama school? Well, it really was simple. We were practicing prior to that game. You'll notice there was an open week between November the 15th and November 22nd. And to this day, I'll never understand why the coaches pushed us so hard during those 2 weeks. We were in shape. We had proved that. We were 9-0. We were flying high. And at the same time, they pushed us. And in those scrimmages, live scrimmages that we had, 2 key players were injured and did not play in that Sacs game. QB1, Jimmy Nipper, sustained an injury, wasn't able to play. James Owens, All-American, sustained an injury, wasn't able to play. And I remember, bless his heart, I know George Wells maybe took a few snaps, and David White, who had been playing defensive back, had probably taken 10 or 12 snaps the whole year. And suddenly those 2 guys were looking at starting at quarterback and playing quarterback, I should say. And not to mention the morale of having lost 2 key players. You say, well, how good were they? I'll show you. Look at the bottom there, 68 player awards. James Owens, All-American, Parade Magazine. James Owens, All-Southern by the Orlando Sentinel newspaper. And James Owens, All-Star Game. Great honor for him. He was the first black athlete to sign in a football scholarship at Auburn University. He was a leader. He was a pace setter there at Auburn. In fact, they give still an award at Auburn to worthy players called the James Owens Courage Award. But look at the rest of it. In the All-State division, oh, well, that was me, but honorable mention, okay, Birmingham News. Thank you, Birmingham News. I think I've lost my camera here. What have I done here? Hang on, guys. Hang on. Let's go to this guy right here. Or maybe not. How about this one right here? Oh, well. I don't know why I have lost the camera here, but, maybe I broke it. I'm not the cutest guy in town, How about camera A? We'll do that one. Okay. Where was I? Oh, I mentioned honorable mention, and it takes me out. Thank you, technology. Well, nevertheless, here we are. James Owens, All-State, Birmingham News, All-State, Birmingham Post-Herald. Jimmy Nipper, All-State, Birmingham News, All-State, Birmingham Post-Herald. 2 great guys, and neither one of them was able to step up to the plate and be a part of our team that fateful night at Sacs, Alabama. Well, it's kind of an interesting year that year, but again, a year that we look back on, and I think that in many ways, that the lesson that we learned our sophomore year, and the work that we had done to prepare physically was only part of the work that was required mentally or emotionally to be a winner. I mean, are there takeaways from this story? Well, sometimes discipline changes your destiny, and being disciplined as a team, being disciplined as an individual makes a big difference. Culture matters. Coach Bryant used to talk about the team having there at Alabama a oneness, he called it, a oneness. And because of that oneness, the team played as a unit. No one worried about, well, Coach Saban calls it the process, but it's basically you do your job. Don't worry about the other people, and don't worry about the play that just occurred. Don't worry about the play that comes after the one you're about to run. Worry about this play. Be where your feet are. That's where you need to be in your mind. Now, how does the transfer portal and the NIL program, help create that oneness with the team? I'm not even going to go into that. I have my own opinions about it. They're not good, but if you ever want to hear them, call me up. I'll tell you about them. Here's another point. Brotherhood lasts. When you sweat, bleed, get tired, lose, and win, it creates a brotherhood on the team. Again, it's maybe another name for that oneness that Coach Bryant talked about. And sometimes the turning point isn't the score of the game, it's who leaves. 2 players out destroyed that oneness that we had as a unit, both offensively and defensively. And frankly, sometimes the story and the moral of the story isn't about the losses, it's about the wins. Winning together. It's about, well, I will say this, those losses help build the effort and the discipline and the team oneness that becomes wins. And I'm not a coach, never have been a coach, never really desired to be a coach, but I knew some really good ones. And the one common denominator is that they loved their players and wanted their players to improve and be better, and as Coach Saban would say, develop value for themselves, not only on the field, but also in life as well. So, anyway, with all that said, I'm going to cut this thing loose here. It's been 43 minutes. Good grief. Where does time go when you're having fun? But I appreciate you watching tonight, and I appreciate you listening to me and putting up. Some of you may not have ever seen these statistics before. If you go to the Alabama High School Athletic Association webpage, you can see stats like this on just about every high school team that has played in the game of football. And it's an interesting scenario. And all those teams that you saw on the chart, you can actually click on the team and it will take you to their page and you can see exactly how they turned out. It's pretty neat little adventure to wander around on that website by the Alabama High School Athletic Association. So I will try to post, if I can remember it, short-term memory, the link to that database in the comments section after I post the video. But again, I hope you have a great evening. There's a couple things that I would like for you to look at, if you would, and that is, be sure and ring the bell. That bell tells you when I'm on the air. again, and it's a reminder. And also, these are my new toys. You want to subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel because, well, it kind of makes the algorithm look better. And I can't look better, but the algorithm can look better. So with all that said, I'm getting out of here. I've got another call tonight with my homeowners association I got to get prepped for. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. It was an interesting season, the season of 66. And I hope you have a great week. And God bless. Take care. Well, hey, thanks for spending a few minutes with me on Senior Moments. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure and tap that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll be back soon with more stories from a misspent youth, and maybe some of yours too.